You know, Susan, I guess, you know, I'm just gonna, for the purposes of the interview, start at the beginning. You get on the plane in Erie, right?
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
just tell me about that, about getting on board in Erie. You know, what basically led you to take this flight, that kind of stuff.
Oh, my oldest brother was employed in Washington D.C. at the time for Defense Intelligence, and he and his wife had just given birth to a new baby, and I was to be the baby's godmother. Two other brothers also were in the area. One had just recently come home from Vietnam and was stationed in Maryland, and the youngest brother was also stationed in Maryland. So we were going to get together for Christmas.
And you can look at me the whole time, just
okay.
She's not even
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
So you get, and the documentary, the docudrama, the show they did, said you basically got one of the last seats on this plane. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it was booked pretty heavily because of the holiday.
Mm-hmm. So let's go through. You know, the as far as I know, you made some mental note of the weather.
Yes, I looked out the window, and it was snowing very hard. The snow was dense. I could not even see to the end of the wing that evening.
Mm-hmm. And you're thinking to yourself, I mean, I'd be thinking, what are we doing here?
I was thinking, isn't it amazing that they can fly in this kind of weather?
And the flight's unremarkable, right? As far as most of the trip.
The flight was bumpy, but considering the weather, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, let's get right to, you know, the approach in Bradford and the crash. What you saw, you know, you're sitting right about the wing, maybe a little ahead of the wing?
I'm in the second seat from the front,
okay,
on the right-hand side of the plane. And they had, you know, announced to prepare for landing, buckle your seatbelts, etc. And as we were, you know, coming in for a landing, the right wing went off. The right wing, oh, geez, let me see. The plane hit a tree, mm-hmm, and the right wing was torn off the plane. At that point, it sounded like you know, heavy fabric ripping, and there was like electricity arcing through the plane, sparks through the interior of the plane, and at that point the plane started to gyrate, and it kind of flipped, and the left wing went off, and then it nosedived down into the ground.
And you said there was that, I mean, you didn't have much time to deal with,
no,
but there was that moment of contact you made with another passenger.
Yeah, the lady sitting ahead of me had turned around, and she had a look of horror on her face. And I was about to tell her, don't worry, we're going to be fine. And I never got one word out of my mouth. It was instant.
And strangely enough, you see the wing get torn off. You see the right, yeah, wing get torn off the, yes, plane.
Yes.
Not only heard it, but saw it. And there's not really a thought of doom in your mind.
No, I thought that we were on the runway. I thought that they would have another plane for us and we'd continue. My worst thought was that we'd be delayed, mm-hmm, for a little while.
You were delayed, right?
Yes.
You were correct with that.
Yeah, I was. Truer words were never spoken.
So now the plane has crashed. What's happening to you? What's happening around you?
As the fuselage landed upside, you know, we were upside down, hanging in our seats, and I was unconscious for a good part of the time. But I remember coming to a little bit, enough to know that I was in serious trouble because I was having difficulty breathing. And I reached my hand to my nose to clear away some debris or some muck from the swamp. And then I kind of went unconscious again. The next thing I remember was probably a teenage boy found me. And he said, "Dad, here's another one." And I heard a man say, "Oh my God." And he came up to me and he was talking, and he said that he wouldn't forget me, but that they would have to get some kind of equipment in there before he could move me, that there was too much debris on top of me. And sooner or later he came back and said, "We can't get anything in here, we're going to try to pull you out." And so he got me around under the arms and tried to pull, but my seatbelt was still fastened. And he reached down, and I think he and another guy ended up got the seatbelt off and pulled me out of the seat.
And when they get to you, is there any sense of relief, or is this, you're too hurt at this point?
Yeah, yes, I think I was a little bit relieved. And the next thing I remember was waking up around a fire. Some survivors in the back that weren't injured had pulled suitcases and gifts, presents from the plane, and built a fire to basically so we could stay warm enough to wait for rescue workers to arrive.
Because it's a very cold night.
It's very, very cold.
And at that point, do you remember, I mean, it's snowing pretty badly too?
Yeah, that I don't remember.
Okay.
I do remember having both frostbite and burns on my hands from
cold and
close to the fire. Yeah, right.
The rescue itself. I mean, this is such a kind of I don't want to say rugged, but it's isolated. The spot as far as getting into. How does that go? What's your memory of the rescue?
I just remember regaining consciousness enough to hear people screaming that they saw lights coming over the hill, that they said help had arrived, and someone made a statement, "I think we should take the kids first." And I'm thinking, God, I hope they think I'm a kid. Hope they think I'm a child.
You want out?
I want out, yeah.
You're badly hurt, though.
Badly hurt, yes.
So what is the extent of your injuries?
I had 18 fractures. I had contusion of the kidney, an injured lung, and multiple abrasions and cuts, loss of blood, and
it's pretty bad when they take you into the hospital. Well, obviously later on you hear this, but what is it that happened when you get to the hospital?
Well, the way we were taken out of the crash site was on toboggans tied to snowmobiles, and then ambulances were waiting up on the road, and I have no recollection after being tied to a snowmobile, to a toboggan. I was told by my physician at Bradford Hospital that on arrival I was not breathing, and that he had detected just very faint heart sounds.
And so they, at that point, they're left with a dire situation.
Right.
And fortunately it worked. But you're in the hospital for weeks then, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you're still, let's talk about, you're still in the hospital when the next crash happens, right?
Yes, I was still in ICU. It was late in the evening when a nurse came in and said, "Oh, we think you're well enough now to go to a regular room." And prior to that, I heard one of the passengers from my plane who was to go home the next day via airplane in the hallway crying, saying, you know, there had been another crash and she wasn't going to get on an airplane the next day. And so I asked the nurse if they were moving me because of another crash, and she said yes. So I was moved to a regular room, and at that point, a priest came up into the room and told me that, you know, there were more victims, but he didn't think this second crash was quite as bad as the first one. However, you know, it was a very remarkable evening.
Mm-hmm. No, I can imagine. I mean, I can't imagine, to be honest with you. So you don't go. You spend the better part of a year.
Yes.
Recuperating.
Right.
You know, between Bradford and Erie hospitals. You worked at St. Vincent, right?
I worked at St. Vincent at the time.
So you were at St. Vincent as a patient then, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you said September before you go back part-time.
September I went back to work part-time.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As you think back to that rescue, you know, obviously because of your injuries, memory of the actual rescue, but when you think back to the rescuers, what are your thoughts toward them and toward what went on?
Oh, gee. You know, I think how fortunate we were that these people who, you know, were with family celebrating the holiday, you know, would just leave and come out in that dreadful weather and try to help their fellow human beings. I remember several days after I was hospitalized, a man showing up at the hospital who had found my wallet, and the wallet had been sliced. I mean, the money in it and everything was just cut in two.
Oh, it was sliced like right down instead of like this way. It was sliced in half.
Yeah,
this
right.
way.
And you know, he returned it to me, and I thought that was quite nice of him. And the only physician who got out to the crash site was a family doctor from Kane, Pennsylvania, and he left his wife and I think he said 7 or 8 children at home, and was there most of the night. And I met with him later on, and he, you know, recounted to me how he just came home almost frozen. His wife told me she had waited up for him, and he didn't come home, so she went to bed, and she remembered waking up about 4:30 in the morning, and he was in a tub of hot water in the bathroom trying to get warm. Because, yeah. He said he had gotten new gloves for Christmas, and he had them on, and he said they were just totally ruined from.
When you in the years that have gone, I mean, obviously now, you know, we're right on 50 years. You know, do you how do you look back on that? You know, in the 50 years that you've basically
been given,
had since
but
then.
I've been given 50 years, and I've been very blessed. First of all, the way that I had to be moved out of the airplane, that with the spinal injuries that I had, that I'm able to walk and lead a fairly normal life. I do have residuals from it, but compared to what it could be, I'm very, very fortunate. I've been blessed with 50 years that it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and I'm guessing thankful for those 50 years.
Indeed, I am.
Is there anything I haven't touched on you think is important?
Let me think. I had very, very difficult days afterwards, and I couldn't have gotten through it without family and friends, and they were very important to me, very important in my recovery. As I worked at St. Vincent, and I had previously had good relationships with the staff and the doctors and that, and they were absolutely wonderful, as was the staff in Bradford. I thought the care was excellent. Yeah, it's hard to believe it's 50 years. They say time flies, but wow.
Memories are still pretty vivid.
Pretty vivid, yeah.
Is Christmas, a weird time for you?
Yeah, it sometimes can be very difficult. As the years go by, it's a little, it becomes a little easier, but at first it was very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.